This is a football podcast, man. Meat, football, good. Man, we talk football. We eat burgers.
Welcome back, one and all, to Scramble Drill. It is I, Josh, talking about starts of the week. We actually have a pretty decent amount of things that we can go over here. We have had Thursday night football come and go. Some things that I think we can take away from that, which, I mean, by the way, just on a side note, I guess, a tangent. Thursday night football, it was awesome in that on the one hand, you got to see the stars show out. You know, Malik Nabers, CeeDee Lamb had great games. Daniel Jones looked halfway decent, has looked pretty good for the past few weeks. Dak Prescott looked pretty solid as well. But my God, the flags. I know everybody on Twitter was talking about the flags. Just how obscene it is that it feels like every single play there was a flag for something, whether or not there was a penalty. It was ridiculous. I don't know if anything needs to be done. What can be done, I don't know. But it was terrible, objectively awful to see every single play paused for a flag. Al Michaels losing his mind about how many flags there were in the game was peak. Like, Al Michaels is a legend and he's kind of over the hill, but he was so frustrated. It's like, there's been 147 penalties. It was amazing. Anyway, Thursday night football is come and gone. We've got some things we can talk about there. Starts the week on this episode, and we've got some questions from Instagram. By the way, you can follow us on Instagram at scrambledrillshow_. Also, while we're doing little promo things, if you enjoy the show, leave us a rating and review on the podcast feeds wherever you're listening. If it's on Spotify, leave us a quick little 5-star rating. Some good vibes on Apple Podcasts as well. If you enjoy what we're doing, please leave us a rating and review. All right, Thursday night. So, Malik Nabers. I know everybody is talking about Malik Nabers. He's the talk of the town because I think it's just really unique what we've gotten from him so far. I know Puka Nacua came out last season and sort of lit the NFL on fire. But Puka Nacua came out of the ether and was an undrafted sort of player that you picked up on. I mean, I picked him up in the granddaddy of them all off waivers right before week 1 last season. Just because I had seen the smoke and the fire coming out of training camps, and, you know, it's a dynasty league. Like, it was crazy that he was even on waivers in a dynasty league anyway, but the fact that he was there, like, that is how under the radar Puka Nacua was coming into the season last year. Malik Nabers is the opposite, but he's producing at the same rate, perhaps even a better rate. Well, it's not perhaps, it is a better rate than what Puka Nacua was doing this time last season. He is the second player in NFL history as a rookie to have 35 plus receptions in his first 4 games. The other guy to do it was Puka Nacua. I think Puka had 38 or 39 receptions through his first 4 games last season. Malik Nabers also has the touchdowns. He's got 3 touchdowns in his first 4 games. And this is just insane to me because rookies don't do this. They don't get this immense target share, this insane, volume, workload in an NFL offense just off the rip. It just doesn't happen. This is really, really special stuff. His last 3 games, he's got target numbers of 18, 12, and 15 targets. It is incredible. I know he played on Thursday, so he's got the inflated numbers there, but he was leading the NFL in targets coming into Thursday, and then, just followed it up with another 15 target performance, another 100-yard performance. It's crazy because he is winning in the middle of the field. He's winning in the slot. He's winning out wide. They are using him everywhere, and he's killing everybody. It's so impressive, so wildly impressive. So I wanted to preempt the episode with Ben next week where we react to all these things. We're going to do a bit of a rankings look, probably more from a redraft perspective, and Malik Nabers will be pretty high there. But I just wanted to do a quick little dynasty exercise, trying to figure out where I would assign his value moving forward. There's this tier of the top 4 guys, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I don't really want to assign a 1, 2, 3, 4 between them. I think you can pretty much value 1 through 4 in any sort of order. I would personally have Amon-Ra 4th of those, but honestly, between 1 and 3, it's a pick 'em. I don't care. Malik Nabers to me is right after, and I think he's 1 or 2 more of these weeks away from honestly being in that same tier with some of those other guys. I have Malik Nabers ranked above Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty right now. And it's not because Marvin Harrison hasn't been great. It's because Malik Nabers has essentially the same draft capital, the same hype coming into the NFL that Marvin Harrison did. And the production is just ridiculous. It's insane. And he's still got the crazy explosive ability and the touchdown, the ability to win in the red zone. It can't be overstated how valuable Malik Nabers is in Dynasty moving forward. He is the sort of player that you can't trade because the value is only going to increase. I would not be shocked at all if at the end of the season we decide that Malik Nabers' consensus is the Dynasty wide receiver 1. Would not shock me whatsoever. Because you're probably going to look up at the end of the year and he's going to have 1,400, 1,500 yards as a rookie with that pedigree and draft capital coming in. So if you take Puka Nacua, but you have preseason hype along with the production, you get Malik Nabers. And it's just crazy. And Marvin Harrison probably still going to have a great rookie year. But, oh man, Malik Nabers is setting himself up to be just ridiculous. Like pants on fire. You can send me anything. I will reject it. That's the value that Malik Nabers is at. And lost in all this, maybe it's not lost. Maybe you've noticed this as well. Daniel Jones looks really dang good, doesn't he? He does not look terrible. Maybe really good is an overstep. I don't know about really good, but he looks solid. He looks like a solid NFL quarterback moving forward. Man, I'm hot and bothered. I'm hot and bothered about Malik Nabers. We've talked about him a lot, so it might be old news at this point, but my goodness gracious, he's incredible. Starts of the week. Let's talk about a couple different starts here. I've got 4 this week, and one of them is kind of like a 2-for-1. The first one, and this is horrifying because tight ends, they've been so bad. So incredibly bad. There's not a single tight end averaging more than 13.5 PPR fantasy points per game this year, which hasn't happened in a hot minute. You got to think back to pre-Travis Kelce days, pre-Gronk days when you're trying to find something like that, because there's always been that one guy at least that's been dominant. You've had Gronkowski, and then you've had a Kelce run, and then there was that year a few years ago where you had Mark Andrews and Kelce doing it. TJ Hawkinson in recent years has been a pretty consistent 13, 14 PPR points per game scorer. Nobody's doing it right now. Mark Andrews is falling off the face of the map. Travis Kelce's old. Trey McBride's hurt. He was doing it a little bit. Brock Bowers is a rookie. There's nobody doing it. The start of the week, though, is Dalton Kincaid versus the Baltimore Ravens. It could come back to burn me, but so far in the limited sample size we've gotten from this season, Brock Bowers and Jake Ferguson have both been top 3 tight ends on the week when they've played the Baltimore Ravens. It seems backwards a little bit because they've got Kyle Hamilton, who you would think is probably the best player in the NFL at covering the opposing team's tight ends. But Baltimore has been a little leaky to opposing teams' tight ends. The other thing, too, is Buffalo's offense has had a very odd start to the year. Not in that they haven't been good, but that they've been good in maybe ways we didn't expect. They've been really good running the ball. And they've also got the Thursday night game where they destroyed the Dolphins. And then you've got the Monday night game this past week where they destroyed the Jaguars. And they won those 2 games 2 different ways. They won the first one on the ground, and then in the second one, it was hyper efficiency, the Jaguars game. It was hyper efficiency in the air, and basically everybody ate. They haven't had a game that is sort of emblematic of Buffalo's offense in years past. They have not yet had a game where you throw the ball a ton with Josh Allen and a few guys have a ton. Like, they just haven't thrown the ball a ton. They have not thrown the ball very much this year. They've been hyper efficient. They've been really good on the ground. Against Baltimore, it's probably going to be a pretty tight game, I would imagine. You're just not going to have the hyper efficiency that they've had, I think, in the past 2 weeks. And then in week 1, they played Arizona, and you got glimpses. But again, it was this hyper efficiency, and maybe that's what the offense is moving forward. But I would imagine things would slow down a bit. And then if they do, Dalton Kincaid is, I think, the number one option in the offense, even though they're spreading it around a lot. I have a feeling about Dalton Kincaid scoring a touchdown this week. Aaron Jones versus the Green Bay Packers probably feels like low-hanging fruit. It's too obvious, right? He's playing against his former team. He's been really good in the red zone with goal line carries, and he's also been really good with his target share. He's got a 19% target share thus far in the season, which is either first or second. Probably should have edited that. Either first or second in the NFL this season. So he's been sneaky, really good. 2 claps for everybody that said you have to trade all your running backs after they turn 26, because we've got a lot of evidence that that's not necessarily true anymore. You don't need to do that. Aaron Jones has been really good. James Conner, we're going to talk about him as a start of the week. He's been really good. This is just one of those ones where it's like, yeah, he's playing against his former team. There's going to be that added motivation, and his usage thus far has been incredibly encouraging. And the Minnesota Vikings have been so good in almost every facet. They're probably one of the 5 best teams in the NFL so far this year. Next, we got Marvin Harrison versus the Washington Commanders. Yes, probably every single week, one of these starts of the week is going to be somebody playing the Commanders, just because they are terrible. They're bad against the run on defense. They're bad against the pass. It's not good. These are the wide receiver ones stat lines that the Washington Commanders have played. Week 1, it was Chris Godwin. He had 8 for 83 and a touchdown, 22.3 PPR points. Week 2, Malik Nabers, 10 for 127 and 1, 28.7 PPR points. Week 3, Jamar Chase, 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns, 29.8 PPR points. Survey says the wide receiver 1 playing against the Commanders is going to have 20-plus points in PPR leagues. Marvin Harrison, I know you're starting him if you've got him, but I would feel incredibly encouraged about the Commanders' defense. They stink against the pass. It's not exaggeration. Whoever's playing the Commanders is a start of the week going forward. It's just going to be a rule moving forward. They're so bad. So Marvin Harrison, and then also James Conner. The game against the Lions last week, they essentially didn't have the ball for much of the game. They were outpossessed an incredible amount by the Lions, and that's the way the Lions want to play. They just want to run down your throat, grind a game out, and beat you down, which is exactly what they did to the Cardinals last week. Again, Washington is not a good defense whatsoever. And their run grade, according to PFF, their rush defense grade is, let's see if we can find them here, 13th worst in the NFL thus far this season. And it's not just that the Commanders have a bad rush defense, which they don't have a great one. It's that James Conner is a true, complete workhorse, which is a rare role in the NFL these days. He's one of the few ones. And I think if they're going to carve him up in the air, there's also going to be opportunities in the red zone for James Conner to score. I could easily see 1 or 2 touchdowns this week for James Conner. We got a couple questions on Instagram. First one here is, how do we feel about Zamir White? Is he droppable in redraft? Well, I'm here to say yes. He is absolutely droppable in redraft. He's been absolutely terrible, inefficient, hot garbage on the ground thus far this season. And he only played 22% of snaps in week 3. So he's being phased out of the offense. He might have honestly been one of those guys when the Raiders coach was talking about guys who made business decisions. Zamir might have been one of those guys. He's just looked so bad. He's looked slow. Yes, you can drop Zamir White thus far in the season. He has lost his job as far as I'm concerned, and the Raiders offense is not one that I necessarily want to be buying an inefficient running back in. Next one. When is Bijan Robinson going to have his big game? I'm thinking about bailing. Well, I don't know what bailing means in your case. Does that mean if it's a dynasty league, you're trying to trade him, or if it's a redraft league, you're dropping him? Because you're not going to drop him. He's not been maybe what we expected so far in the season, but he has been good. I think he's the RB17 in PPR right now, which is obviously not what you want. You want a guy that's going to be top 5. And he's ranked as a top 5 running back pretty much every week. If we were to do our rankings, he would be in the top 5. He hasn't scored. The other thing, too, is that they've played Kansas City and Pittsburgh in 2 of their first 3 weeks, which are, I know Kansas City on paper, thus far their numbers don't say they're an amazing rush defense because they play Baltimore. But they are a very good defense, and they stymied the Cardinals, or they stymied the Falcons this past week. The Falcons want to run outside zone pretty much every single time, and the Chiefs said, no, you're not going to, and they didn't. And then Pittsburgh is the best defense in the NFL. They're like number 1 against the pass, number 1 against the rush. They're great. So you've got to factor that in. He's had 2 really difficult matchups in terms of who they're playing in the first 3 weeks. The other matchup was against Philadelphia, which is supposed to have a pretty good rush defense, and he carved them up. I think he had 14 for like 95 yards and a touchdown. So we have seen that the talent is still there. Bijan Robinson is going to be just fine. When's he going to have his big game? Soon. I went and looked at who the Falcons are playing coming up. They've got, in 2 weeks, Tampa Bay, and in 3 weeks, the Carolina Panthers. Those on paper are great matchups against the run. So if it doesn't happen this coming week where he has a monster game, it's going to happen, I think, very, very soon. Bijan Robinson still moving forward as a top 5 running back for me. Last one here, and this is on the heels of Christian McCaffrey going to see a specialist in Germany for his Achilles/calf injury. Probably the Achilles is what he went to see the specialist for. But the question is, he has both Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. He's for sure going to hold Christian McCaffrey for when he comes back. Wants to trade Jordan Mason. What should he pursue? So first off, I would not just arbitrarily trade Jordan Mason. There's a chance, I don't know what percent I would give it at this point, but there's a chance Christian McCaffrey does not play the rest of the fantasy football season. So that being said, Jordan Mason's a top 8, top 10 running back in fantasy football for the entire time Christian McCaffrey's out. So I just wouldn't trade him just because. If I'm going to trade Jordan Mason, I would trade for a good return. I would not trade him for some bums or some filler pieces or just like a collection of, Terry McLaurin a second or, guys that don't really make a difference on your team. Jordan Mason right now for the foreseeable future until Christian McCaffrey gets back will make a difference on your teams. So if I'm going to trade him, I'm not going to trade him for a running back. Why? Because if you trade across positions, you can quote unquote get better value for it. When you've got a nebulous situation at running back, let's say you offer Jordan Mason for, Aaron Jones. Well, the guy who has Aaron Jones is going to be like, yes, Jordan Mason's probably better than Aaron Jones week to week right now, but what if CMC comes back? Then I would rather have Aaron Jones in the playoffs, and that's totally fair. And running backs are a hot commodity at this point anyway, so somebody isn't probably going to give up a ton for Jordan Mason if you're just going to try and trade 1-for-1 for a running back. But if you're going for a receiver, a la a Devonta Smith or a Chris Godwin, I think you can get that done because teams need running backs at this point in the season. And I think getting a receiver, especially Devonta Smith, like if you're in Dynasty, if you can go get Devonta Smith for Jordan Mason right now, that is a smash because Devonta Smith has the concussion. He might miss a week or two. So you've got the little bit of the injury boost in terms of your ability to trade for him. And Devonta Smith is just a much safer asset in the long run than Jordan Mason. And in redraft, I think the same the same thing applies. Going to get like Chris Godwin, who has been really, really good so far this year. Jordan Mason right now solidifies an opposing team's running back spot. And I think Chris Godwin is going to be a much safer or much more steady asset in your lineup moving forward. So if you're going to do the trade, do it for something like that. Don't just send it for packing peanuts. But all that being said, if I'm going to trade either Christian McCaffrey or Jordan Mason, I'm probably going to trade Christian McCaffrey and hold Jordan Mason, because I think there's probably going to be somebody that has the hopium that Christian McCaffrey is going to come back and be a difference maker in the playoffs. And he still very well might. And he might come back in another 4 weeks. He might come back like week 8, week 9, and then you have him for the remainder of the season. It's very possible. But there's also the chance that he doesn't come back to like week 13, 14 when you're in your playoffs. And there's a good chance that if you drafted Christian McCaffrey in redraft, you're not going to make the playoffs unless you get some points in your lineup while he's out. So if you had Jordan Mason, I think you could potentially use Christian McCaffrey to add something to your lineup that's not currently there, because Christian McCaffrey's on your IR. So going to trade him probably for a running back, for a wide receiver or a tight end. Same thing, not trading him for a running back, trying to get a flex option there for your wide receivers. I just think Mason is probably going to carry you to the quote-unquote promised land, and I don't know that Christian McCaffrey will at this point, which really hurts my soul because he's my champion and the granddaddy of them all, but there's a pretty good chance he's not going to be much of a factor the rest of the season. Okay, that is it for Starts of the Week. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, rating, reviewing the show, for checking us out on Instagram. Best of luck in week 4 fantasy football. We'll see all of you early next week when Ben and I are breaking down week 4 and all the things that happened. Have a good one, everybody.